You've probably seen this person. She's on LinkedIn. She just got her AI certification and posts 5 times a week about disruption, the future of work, and the death of insert thing here. She has a lot of influence and a lot of followers. She walks into a meeting with a CEO with a deck and a demo and a lot of enthusiasm, and she talks wildly about what AI can do. She makes the CEO nod a lot, and she leaves the meeting feeling like it was a win. But several months later, nothing has changed in the business, and now the CEO is slightly more annoyed at AI than ever before. And not only that, but their employees are making videos like this one. Because there's two different kinds of people building AI businesses right now. One has a lot of attention and very little revenue, and the other has clients paying 10 or 20 or 30 or $40,000 a month on retainer, and most of those people aren't even technical. So I've helped thousands of mid-career experts build advisory practices, and the ones that are getting paid aren't necessarily selling AI knowledge, they're selling a business strategy. So today I'd love to show you the difference. And if you're not sure what you could advise on based on your business background, I have this really great AI niche generator that will help you know exactly what to sell based on your specific background and niche. So I recommend that you check it out because I think it's really going to help you. And now let's dive in. So there's a big difference between an AI evangelist and an AI advisor, as you heard me talking about previously. And there's very much a right way and a wrong way to sell AI. And so many people in my community and so many of my students have come to me and they have been saying, Laura, I'm leading with AI, and I get kind of a cringy response from many of the business owners and leaders that I'm talking to. And the reason is because they're not approaching it the right way. So today I'm going to show you exactly how. An AI evangelist leads with the tool. They're like, let me tell you all the things that this amazing tool can do. And it's just honestly very overwhelming to the leader that they're speaking with. Versus an AI advisor leads with the outcome. So they're really much more focused on what's going on in the business that AI could potentially solve. But let's talk about your problems first, because you've heard enough of AI already. Let's just be honest. An AI evangelist pitches AI capabilities. It's kind of like a shock and awe type of presentation. Oh, it can do this and it can do this. And have you thought about doing this? And I've sat through those myself. And there's a part of me that's thinking, well, I don't have that problem in my business, or I kind of have that solved. I don't see myself using that tool in the way in which you're sharing. And what happens is people start to tune out. It just becomes noise. Versus an AI advisor solves a problem. It leads with a problem. What are the things that you're really struggling with in your business? And in the next section, I'm going to tell you the 3 most important questions you can ask to try to uncover the important problems that business has. An AI evangelist is an expert in the tools. They're an expert in all of the connections, all of the agents, all of the agentic aspects of AI that you could potentially put into your business, which again just overwhelms so many leaders, and their eyes will glaze over. Whereas an AI advisor is an expert in business. They're not just an expert in AI, but they're an expert in overall how a business operates. And I often tell my students, business is just a sum of moving parts. If you think about any type of machine, any type of complex machine, you think about a car or a train or anything else like that, it's a sum of those moving parts. And whereas the parts might look different depending on the industry or the vertical, generally speaking, business operates the same way. You need leads, you need those leads to convert, you need some type of sales mechanism or sales process, you need a way to fulfill, and you need a way for it to go operationally smooth so that no one loses their mind, and then also you need it to be profitable. So if we just look at business from that big picture perspective, we can look at what types of tools may be able to help the business, but leading again with that idea of being an expert in business. An AI evangelist is project to project. So a lot of AI evangelists get paid to speak, or they get paid for a one-day project, or they get paid to build a tool. But that's not very sustainable for most of us who need to have a regular income coming in. Whereas an advisor who's focused in on the business and locked in on business problems is typically paid on retainer. So they don't necessarily have to worry about what happens in between the projects and all the feast and famine and up and down that comes with project work. An AI evangelist builds the tools. So they're all about, let me show you how to build an agent. Let me show you how to create skills. Let me show you my library of MD files, right? Whereas an AI advisor oversees the tools. So for example, I have helped so many different companies. I've made millions of dollars helping organizations implement different types of automation and AI tools. but I've never built one of them. I would not consider myself an expert at all. I do have people in my company and people that I've outsourced to in the beginning stages before I could afford staff who would build the tools, but I knew what I want the tools to do. And I think that's so much more important than being an expert and being the one that builds it. An AI evangelist is typically hired once. They come in, they make a presentation. Again, they give a presentation. They're usually it's a one and done, versus an advisor who's an expert in the business gets paid every month, because business problems never go away. And the more problems that you solve in a business, the more problems are typically uncovered. So for example, if you grow revenue exponentially, well, now there's a bunch of operation problems that need to be solved. So by focusing on the business first, that's what allows you to get paid every month. And an AI evangelist gets attention. They're really good at getting attention, whereas an AI advisor gets paid. And as I often say, I would much rather be paid than be popular. I have lots of friends. I don't need to be popular on the internet. What I need to do is get paid because my kids like to eat and live inside the house. An AI evangelist comes in with the deck and the demo, and they're just telling you all the things that you may or may not need, which again is really just starts becoming part of the noise that leaders are already hearing all the time. Whereas an AI advisor comes in with a collaborative approach. They're not necessarily coming in with a pre-scripted deck and again, all of the amazing features and things that AI can do and trying to impress business leaders that way. What they're very interested in is how could we collaboratively come up with some of the problems that exist in your business, or try to uncover some of those problems. And then as I'm listening to what you're saying as an advisor to a business leader, how can I make sure that that conversation is very collaborative, that I'm hearing you, I'm repeating back what it is that I'm understanding from that leader, so that I can come up with the right solution and not necessarily tell you all the things. And finally, an AI evangelist ends up being an influencer. And for those of you who want to be influencers, totally great. I'm happy for you. But I have worked with many influencers behind the scenes of a large following that are struggling to monetize. So again, my feeling is I'd much rather be an expert and I'd much rather be valuable to a small group of clients than be blowing up on the internet, as much as that does feel good. So again, this is the right and wrong way to sell AI. Now I'm going to show you 3 questions that you can ask that will position you the right way from the beginning. So let's say that you're in a conversation with a leader and you're thinking, oh, this is somebody I can really help. I'd love to see what I can do for them. I'd love to see how I could serve them with my knowledge and my background, but I don't really know how to get started. By asking the right questions that will make sure that they understand that I'm here to understand them versus just sell them on a tool or pitch them on something that they may or may not need. So the first question that you will want to ask a leader is, what is the most repetitive, time-consuming task that pulls your team away from the work that grows the business? And if you ever want to get a CEO or a founder or a leader to open up to you, get them to complain to you, you'll have to figure out how to stop the conversation, because they will just unload because their spouse has heard it, their friends have heard it, and finally they have somebody that they're talking to that seems to care and wants to listen, and that is incredibly valuable. It helps them feel really seen and heard. The next question you want to ask is, where are you losing revenue, time, resources, or people right now because of what isn't getting done? And again, any founder, any leader, any CEO, if you've owned a business before, you know you just spin and think about this all the time. It's just this repeat in your mind of, why isn't this getting done? Or why did that get missed? Or why did that customer not get responded to? Or why is that person having this meeting with this person when really they should just be working and not sitting around and talking to each other? There's all these things that you worry about, that you think about, that you ruminate on when you're running a business. And so again, just having a fantastic person who's willing to ask these questions when everybody else just wants to pitch them a tool is going to be incredibly valuable. And then the third question will transition you to a sales conversation. So these questions are really meant to be asked to anybody that you're talking to that you think would be a really good fit for your services. And then you want to transition. These are the 3 questions that will help you transition them to a sales conversation. And this third question is the transition. It is the bridge from asking them about their business to getting them to actually consider consider working with you. If this problem was solved, what would change for your team day to day? So gets at what's called in sales the cost of inaction question, which is the cost of staying stuck, the cost of not solving this problem. What is it costing you? What is it costing you of your time, your future, your energy, your money? What is it costing you to let this go for one more day? And when you can get to the cost of inaction, you are halfway selling them to your services. This is what's going to queue you up for a fantastic, collaborative, easy sales conversation, because at night they're going to go home and they're going to say, she's right or he's right, that this is costing me way more than I care to admit, and I really need to start thinking about how I'm going to solve it. And I have somebody in front of me who cares, who's asking the right questions, who isn't trying to push anything on me. And that in itself builds so much trust. So let's talk about now how to deliver AI services the right and wrong way. So when it comes to delivering AI services, so many experts out there, so many influencers will just dump everything that they know and everything that they have onto a team or onto a founder and say, here you go, figure out what to do with it. And I think that is a huge disservice, because as somebody myself who's running a 7-figure business, that would really overwhelm me. It would frustrate me. I'm not looking for lots of information. I have plenty of information. What I want is a solution that shortens my learning curve, makes it easier and faster for me to implement the solution to the problems that I'm struggling with. So I'm not unique in that way. As businesses grow and as they become more sophisticated, they're looking for something bespoke. They're not looking for somebody just to kind of unload onto them and data dump onto them. It's the last thing they need. So when you're working with any type of business owner that has been around for a little while, is somewhat sophisticated or quite sophisticated, they're going to much prefer the approach that I'm about to share with you. And the first step is to limit their focus. So the big question that you want to ask them is, what do we need to stop doing to get more of what we want? It's called the Pareto principle, and it's called the 80-20. And it's this idea that 20% of the efforts inside of an organization or a business are yielding 80% of the result. And I always find that this is incredibly accurate. When I begin working with a business, I start asking them, what are we going to stop doing to make room for this project? Because if you just come in with a bunch of AI tools, or you come in with a solution, implementing that solution does take time. It does take resources, even if there's savings on the back end, whether it's time or revenue or energy. Being able to put this into play is going to take focus. So that's why I recommend that we talk about that before we even get started, to limit any future frustration. The second stage is to establish a plan. So really, this is where you sit down with the leader, the founder, and their team, their C-suite, and ask, what can we commit to reasonably over the next 90 days so this feels like a win? And when you both agree on what winning looks like, that's when your scope will get reduced, your time will be reduced, delivering the project or delivering the retainer, and their effectiveness of that work will increase, because you're all in alignment on what's getting done. And then this is the part where you're introducing AI. So keep in mind, in these first two phases, you're not even bringing up AI. You're not even talking about it, because it's so important to limit focus and establish a plan together first. Then we start developing assets that will live in the company. So as you begin your work together, this is where this question comes into play. What assets can we create in the company to get an ongoing ROI on our work together? And that's where you need to pick and choose which AI tool is going to be the best fit for the client. Don't expect them to do that for you. You're the expert, and you should be advising on what direction to go in. So there's two different tools that I personally like and that I use in my own company. The first is High Level. You might be familiar with it. There's a lot of buzz going on online with High Level. There's a lot of like affiliate stuff going on. I just honestly ignore all of that noise. And I really like High Level personally when there's a revenue problem. This is where we can bring in workflows, we can bring in pipelines, we can bring in AI-based automations to increase sales and revenue conversions. When there's that problem, when that exists, High Level, there's no better tool, in my opinion. My clients have gotten fantastic results, and there's just so much value from you being able to bring this to the table. When it's any type of back-end issue, if it's finance, if it's operations, anything like that, or any type of workflow related issues, so content creation, any type of even sales or marketing operations, that's when I like to bring in Claude. This is where I bring in skills. This is where I bring in agents. This is where I bring in systems. And what's really nice is once you build this out in your company, or if you join my program, Expert Freedom, I hand it all to you so you don't even have to build it from scratch. But once you have these assets built for one client, it's so easy to then replicate it and customize it for the next client. And this is where you get a tremendous amount of time savings by also being incredibly effective to the clients that you have. And then finally, and this is super important to do, you want to look at the progress of your work together. So asking, did this do what we wanted it to do? And this is where you're going to want to look at the data. I made it small and it's so important. I crossed it out and made it big. Looking at the data. So recently, I just had a client last week where an institution was paying for my work with a nonprofit organization, and that institution is very well known and extremely reputable. And that institution came to me and said, I'm not sure that they're getting the results that we wanted them to receive. Of course, I got a little nervous. I was like, gosh, I've been working with them for about 5 years. They've referred me over $1 million worth of revenue and work, and I want to make sure that they're really happy. So I started to look at the data. This was a project that was built out in high level. I started looking at the pipelines, and I realized that there was a manual application approval process that was getting stuck with the team, the bottlenecks with the team. And so I went back to the institution. I showed them the data. I showed them the pipeline. I said, I think we have some options here. We can first look at automating the application approval process. We're going to need to allocate more resources to ensure that this does not become a bottleneck in the future. But this idea of it's not working is very common. People, leaders, people who are running organizations, executive directors in this situation, they're busy, they're stressed, they're overwhelmed, and it's really easy to get frustrated with something new. That's why it's so important to review progress and look at the data. And that data, those KPIs, should go back to what it was that you said that you were going to focus on in your plan. What's really nice is you can repeat this process every 90 days. This is what I call the LEAP method. This is what I teach inside of my program, Expert Freedom. This is also, I hand my students all of my tools, templates, assets, and skills, and agents, and workflows inside of the program so they don't have to create it from scratch. But this is a method that I have used to generate millions of dollars in revenue, and my students have as well. So this LEAP method is proven. It works really, really well. And this is what I recommend that you use to service your clients, whether you're using AI or not. So as you look at this process, I want to leave you with one more thing, because if you remember nothing else from this video, this is what I want you to write down. AI is not commoditizing the expert who positions themselves as a business advisor. AI is commoditizing the person who doesn't. The research, the design, the agentic nature of AI, like yes, those are changing super fast, but the person who can sit across from a CEO and say, based on what I hear you saying, here's exactly what I think is broken and here's how I would recommend fixing it. That person is never going to be replaced by lower cost tools with lower barriers to entry. That person is only becoming more valuable. And you don't even have to become an AI expert. You just need to become an expert in someone who uses AI. And there is a big difference to your business. The companies that are suffering right now aren't suffering from too little AI. They're suffering from too little clarity. And clarity is what you've been building in your career and your experience and every problem you've already quietly solved for someone else. So if this is something you want to learn more about, I would recommend that you check out my 7-figure roadmap below. That's where I share with my step-by-step method from going from pre-revenue to a time-leveraged 7-figure expert business. I'll see you over there.